Hello, people. Now, I missed a week. Yes, it happened. Yes, I'll explain what happened. I suppose for people listening in the future, I technically didn't miss a week because, you're seeing this in the future. But for everyone else who has been subscribed and following along, I do think I owe you a bit of an explanation. So here we go. The week is going like normal, right? And then, grandparent has to go to hospital. Not a big deal. Everything's fine. But it is time consuming, right? But you're like, fine. I can read on the go. It's not an issue. Ended up being 2 trips, 1 in, 1 out. It's a to-do, right? A bureaucracy. This type of situation. And that would have been fine. Until, right? So that week is ending, which is last week. And I don't know if you have a home or you deal with these. But this guy here. You see that? Is that coming up? You see this melty bit? It's not supposed to be melty, right? And then this part down here, this little switcheroo, you can't see it. There's a hole right here. There's clearly not supposed to be a hole. Now this has, think of these, right? But all up in here. And they, you flip these switches and your house has power and whatnot. But when it melts like this, then you have no power. Right? And that happened right on upload day. Oh, I got dirt all over me. But it'll be worth the clickbait. It'll be worth the clickbait, right? A little clickbaity, but maybe I've earned it. So that happened right on upload day, and so that was out. No internet, no power, lost a fridge full of food, and then let's troubleshoot this thing, right? You take that one out, you put a new one in, then, because everything went, meltdowny, you gotta go buy more of these guys. This is an old one. Little breaker 19s. You gotta go buy more of these and shove those in. And then find out where all the juice goes. But we did all that. It took a hot second. Stuff didn't work. You're like, my lights were dim if they turned on. The little compressors on my AC were fritzed and wouldn't juice anything. The stove's doesn't turn on. You know what I mean? It's just issues. You're like, so what is this mess? Nowadays, again, this is hitting in the days. We eventually just have to call an electrician because the crap's getting funky. He does this little thing with some testing. And it turns out that from the street, right? So the big transformer outside is wonky. And it sent wonky juju into my guy. And my guy then committed seppuku, right? Rather than burn the house. Much respect to him. So we didn't have to wait for the electric company to come out and fix that mess. Get that fixed. And now we're back on sort of even keel. Minus a fridge full of food. Right? About a week behind on laundry. The whole works. Just imagine your whole house has no juice and then what all has to happen. Right? So that's what's happened. And then I'm like, it was like Wednesday or Tuesday when it seemed sort of settled. I go, should I upload now? But I'm gonna be honest, I didn't have the juice for it, right? I felt like it might have been lacking a little bit. So I decided, I'm gonna just wait till the normal day and then come on and do the book I was gonna do. And with just this explanation and a very clickbaity thumbnail for once. So that's what happened. I did not abandon anyone. I abandoned none of my fans. I thought about you constantly. Oh, what a hot mess. And to boot it, I got a bit of the COVID or some crap. My nose wants to be runny or some mess. It's unpleasant. In any case, did I also read a book? Yes, of course I read a book. I mean, what would you do if the power went out? You'd read a book. What would you do if the power came on? You'd still read a book. I had like 9 audibles. I was okay, other than the Texas heat, which, you know, luckily were some cool days. Do all my appliances work? Well, yeah, you know, give or take a stove. Craziness. Okay. So what did I read? What was I going to present to you all last week? It was going to be The Sundering Flood by William Morris. Now, as you know on this channel, I'm going to be putting all William Morris stuff into the Lord of the Rings, Tolkien category on my channel. Because I didn't know when I first read Tolkien that this is sort of the guy who helped inspire him. And once I knew that, I went and I grabbed this book. I have 5 or 6 sort of individual off of Kindle and one that's like his complete works. I would suggest buying that one if you want to buy one. It's like $2. It's God tier. He is a God tier writer. No doubt about it. For readers, for people who like language, right? The written word, like us. It's absolutely, I would absolutely stop what I'm reading and read one of his things. So, I give it a 5 out of 5 there. But for normie, I'd actually give it a 3 or a 2. I wouldn't recommend it for normies. It's very dense, the verbiage. And it can be, I think, it can be in a way difficult for non-readers to really get what's going on. Well, not that they won't know what's happening, but there's nuance. And I think they will miss the nuance. What we have is 2 quaint little sort of medieval-ish style towns. Again, you can get so much of this, so much of his writing. A paragraph might go, a solid history, and you just absorb it somehow, right? He'll use a few they, thous, this kind of thing, interspersed with a few bits of maybe what they wear, how they look. When you describe a lad as a lad, you know, young and strong, even the way he describes things, everything fits to paint the picture of the time frame. So he doesn't have to stop and explain the time frame. It's really wonderfully done. But what we have is 2 sort of quaint little towns on either side of what they call the Sundering Flood. Now, this is a river that, through whatever means, it's too strong. It's too strong to safely cross in any way. And I think I saw one of these. There's one in Ireland, actually. It's so rocky, and it's cut out in the rocks in such a way that, like, if you try and swim it looks normal. It's not this big or wide in some spots, but if you like try and swim in it, you might die. I literally die. It will like suck you down and you get stuck under rocks in this. So I wonder if this sort of had some play on his idea of this or not. In any case, the premise of our story says, ye cannot cross this water. Can you go down towards the ocean? Yeah, but it's a ways. Can you go up? Yes, but you go into some labyrinth of mountain, and you could eventually go around, obviously. But it's a hassle. And we have our lonesome house by itself. Our hero, Osborne. Strong and bold. Tall, bright, and beauteous. Right? And if you notice, okay, if you read a lot of Tolkien, you'll start to notice even in, okay, you'll go out of your way to describe a certain aspect of a characteristic, because for Tolkien, those aspects meant a certain thing for his mythology. Right now, when I make these comparisons, I'm not saying Tolkien 100% nailed his book to this book, or vice versa. You know, this guy wrote it before Tolkien, so he couldn't have been thinking that. But I get the flavor. I get a strong flavoring. Like these 2 came from the same restaurant or something to this effect, right? You get the strong flavor, and if you think in terms of a mythology, clearly it's not all going to be written by one person. And so the sort of the differences and the connections almost make it fit better, if that makes any kind of weird sense. It's weird when I'm sitting here trying to say it, but I swear to you, you'll get the cadence in some spots. You'll get the verbiage. You'll get the essence in a little bit of a way, where you can see this in my head as I was reading. It times into like the chronology, right? So Aragorn happened way, way back. What happened to his royal line, right? So I'm imagining this kid Osborne tied to that royal line. Now, I did not at the beginning of the book, I was just absorbing it with this in the back of my head that he inspired Tolkien. So clearly I was looking for it a little bit, but it doesn't mean it wasn't there to be found. So just keep that in mind. But I do remember parts where you'll say Aragorn was taller, but Boromir was broader. One has to be better than the other, but I can't diminish the other one too much. That both of them were brave in the face of the Balrog, and would have stayed with Gandalf, because they can't be losers and run from a fight, if it weren't for the halflings, right? Of course, we have a greater charge than our personal honor, right? These kind of things. You see this honor, and it's not solely in William Morris's work. Honor was a big thing in these medieval times, and et cetera, et cetera. But the way it comes across, I do feel like there's enough of a connection. Okay, so your boy Osborne, I better not play with this. It's gonna make too much noise. Your boy Osborne is 14, I think. He's very young. And he's not afraid of the waters. Again, with the waters. The river, Anduin, big deal in Lord of the Rings. There's one particular god, Olmos, I think. The water one. He abandons the Middle Earth, the least out of all the Vanar. Yeah, he's the one who sent the visions to Boromir and Faramir to get him to ye old council. Council of the Ring, right? So that water is at play here means something to me. That it's not as an overt presence as in some of the Lord of the Rings works, clearly, but I'm imagining that the gods, the elves, the dwarves, all adjust how they deal with humans as they learn, right? Clearly the elves after the Silmarillion learned something about how to deal with Middle-earth, and that's why Galadriel is more hands-off than she otherwise might have been. The early elves were like, get in here, I'll teach you. And then it caused issues. So I can see a bit of a degradation in how much they influence or want to overtly influence. In any case, the kid goes down into a cave, meets a dwarf, literally meets a dwarf. Now, as your more mythical type of dwarf, he turns a stone into a mouse, and then the mouse turns into a kid and runs off. There's a bit of this is horrifying of an element to it, but not a horror element. He has a little dagger, cuts off his own head, clean off, but he's not dead. He's just moving the head around. And then he acts like he wants to come cut Osborne's head off. But Osborne, again, overpowers him. And I get the sense that we're because he says, we have our, what does he say? Here is a champion come into my house forsooth. I get the sense that it was some kind of a test of the bloodline, of how much of the proper blood do you have in you, etc. Right before we fully open the gates to help you, this kind of thing. His grandparents were a little freaked out because they're like, we've heard bad things about dwarves. And somehow you live. But apparently he had on a special shirt with special runes on it, special writing. That must have saved him. Now again, I can imagine way back in a past, your family becomes friends with dwarves and they teach you, write these words on your clothing and you'll be known as dwarf friend. right? And then as the years go by, you forget what those words mean, but you still use them. Same as your sort of Celtics have each their own type of knitting on all their sweaters or patterns of their kilts. This situation, right? Like imagine that came from these elves or something, and then to indicate that you're a friend of them, and then the woodland spirits leave you alone, right? This kind of thinking, right? I get it. It connects to me. And he gets a gift from the dwarf. The dwarf gives him the knife. The grandfather hired a guy who was sort of a pansy. They get into a bit of an issue, and to describe what happened, they go into full-on song. Right? And again, I'm like, the dwarves, to give their history, busted out a song. There's something, and it does tie more to sort of your very, very old storytelling. I'm assuming way, way back in the day, dudes would just sing out a tale. Like a bard, right? But in real life, this kind of thing. It bled its way into the books. In any case, it does give it an old feel. And it does also feel like Lord of the Rings to me. Later on, he meets an elf. Just full on. An elf comes to talk to him. I think they end up calling the elf Steelhead? He ends up with like 3 different names. I don't know if maybe it's a transcription issue. In any case, he meets an elf. The elf talks to him full on, just as I came to meet you. He's wearing a gray harbuck, a fine ringmail, scarlet coat embroidered, sword, and a bow. It says, young by seeming, bright-faced and gray-eyed, yellow hair fine as silk. And he'll come in and out of the story like that, right? Randomly when you don't expect him. And I'm like, yeah, bro, elves. But it's not just that you met an elf, right? It's the fact that, what is it? Aragorn, again, line of the kings, grew up in Elrod's house under Elrod's protection and tutelage, specifically because he was the future king and related to him, right? They look after their own. They'll say, your family helped me in ages past, and I haven't forgot that, and I'll still help. Even though your generations go and die and die and die, and I keep living, I remember who you're related to. And he did such a great thing that I will look after you. Right? This kind of thing. Why else is an elf and a dwarf meeting this random kid? And then he also prophesies a little, right? He says, we'll be friends when you're older. Seek the other side of the Sundering Flood, for there lieth thy weird. They have this bit of a farsightedness, a fortune-telling angle to them. I'm like, elves do that. Galadriel does that crap. But they try not to be too specific because they tried that in years past and they go south. He gives them the bow. He gives them the bow and says, the arrows always find their way back to you. They're hard to lose. But if you do lose them, take the third, right? If you lose the first 2, take the third, go to a secluded spot, sling it out, and say these sort of certain words. And more arrows will come to you. And I'm like, bro, you just have... And I think later at some point, when he grows up, Steelhead borrows a horse, and another elf brings it back. I'm like, bro, there's just elves all around this kid. Of course they can go unseen in the woods. They're just all around this kid, specifically watching him because of this in my head bloodline. Now, again, the story doesn't say this, but how can you not think it? Of course, he meets a girl. They're both 13. I think she's 12. They're clearly instant in love. Obviously, she's on the other side of the river. They can't meet. They can only exchange words. And she's met this dwarf, too. She's met this dwarf, and she was sad one day because she didn't have jewelry like the other girls, and just in this dwarf cave were left these wicked nice jewelry. And then what else did they get her? It's a necklace, golden emerald, golden ruby, golden sapphire. Her name, I think she also gets a flute, a magic flute, to call the sheep to her, because of course she works for a living. Because you have to be royal, but also salt of the earth. It's that King Arthur style. Do it all, jack of all trades, master of all trades. Steelhead comes back later as he gets older and gives him a sword made in ancient times. I know all about ancient time swords, right? Sting. Right? What? Glamdring? Wasn't that Gandalf's? And Thorin's sword was an ancient time. Literally. As was Merry and Pippin's that they got from these swords pop up. I'm like, of course they do. Of course it's an unbreakable sword. Of course, if you pull it, it has to draw blood because it has its own sort of way about it. But you're supposed to never pull it, right? And he's an honorable kid, so of course. It says a wicked person or wizard may not dull the edge. No wicked person or wizard may dull the edge. I'm like, wizards. Ever. Shortly after this, a man named Hardcastle tries to take over the sort of the house. Putting his feet up, he's being rude. He's telling y'all are gonna work like slaves. I'm in charge now. And Osborne's like, I don't think so. This don't seem right. We'll let you in as a guest, and now you're being in this kind of way. And again, because he's this king and things have to work the way they have to work, this guy's just not a random criminal. He has a certain amount of honor. He says, we'll duel. Kid comes out with his sword and his shield, and he's like, where's your armor? He's like, I ain't got no armor. Go ahead. And he goes, to be fair, I won't have any armor either. I'll just go with this sword and this fist. They duel, he kills the guy. Honorable kill. We then get a type of... a knight comes. Literally, like an armor and crap. And he's looking for help to fight the Baron of Deepdale. And this book does this a lot too. You feel like you're having this story, and then it turns and goes into this other action. And it does it quickly, right? With not a lot of build-up, but you also never feel lost. And none of it ever feels unimportant at the same time. I mean, it's you gotta read it. It's extremely efficient writing. Every word helps. You know, some books you'll skip chapters and sort of be... If you skip some chapters here, you might get lost. Important parts might have just been in one paragraph. Very fun, very great writing. In any case, your boy Osborne, of course, goes to help. He says, as long as we're still free, I don't want to be owing myself to any kind of master. Of course, because if you're future king, you can't. Again, for all the king stuff I'm making up on my own, okay? So when you read it, you're not going to get all this. But I swear you'll see it if you're a big Tolkien fan. But I am making a lot of this up on my own. It's in my mind. In the course of some action, of course, there's evil on the other side of the river. Of course, Elfhild gets missing or kidnapped or something to this effect. What do we do now? Your boy Osborne's heartbroken. Steelhead comes to him and says, you got to go do great things in the world. And I think you might find her if you do. It's just fine. So he returns to the knight Medard. He's like, okay, I will work for you as long as you seem honorable. I'm going to work. I'm going to do deeds for you. I need to be out in the world some. And that's what happens. You go through these. They're very fun. They're very fun sort of mission quests, adventures. Just pure adventure happening. Sneaking in here, kidnapping these people, battles, trickery, intelligence. It's very, very fun. We then cut to an old sort of shanty cabin. Our boy Osborne, in the course of his adventures, has ended up in a weakened state, obviously. An old lady says, I'll help you if you come over with me. And at first he doesn't want to, but he's like, fine, I'll go with you. He goes in the house. Lo and behold, who's there? He's grown, and now Elfhild is grown. Both beautiful. She's beautiful, he's ragged. She instantly remembers him, obviously, because they're in love and it's pure. He remembers her. Then the old lady cuts to what happened, right? So your adventure, your moves forward, we go back. And this old lady uses some magic. There are some ne'er-do-well gentlemen that come along who clearly see a beautiful Elfhild and want to, what do we say, take what's not given, right? I think we know. And somehow they just don't. And then, you read it and it's the lady. It's the old lady uses magic of some kind. Like, is she a wizard? I'm not exactly sure. In any case, she protects her until she meets the Blue Knight, who buys her out of slavery. But the Blue Knight's completely honorable. And everything sort of goes smoothly until we meet back with Osborne. They go back to town. They're seen as well in the town, etc. Then more action happens. We have battles with guilds. We're helping kings. It's a very great book. I mainly wanted to cover those bits because I cannot help myself. She was given jewelry because she needs to be presentable to the king. I mean, I just see it so well. And again, the rest of the action is fun. It feels a lot of way. Again, it reads a lot like Tolkien. Now, when at first I read some of his works, I almost wanted to discredit Tolkien. That's how good I thought William Morris was. But as I keep reading, I start to realize, again, as a testament to Tolkien, that he's doing this on purpose. I think that it can't be accidental. He's too good of a writer for it to be accidental. But he kept the flavor in such a way that you can, in your mind, connect it like this. I really do think that. You got to read it. Okay. I'm keeping this video short. It wasn't a long book anyway. I didn't go into every little action, but there's great battles. It's great fun. Even if you don't want to harp too much on my theory crafting here. If you like sort of Camelot style, King Arthur, if you like Lord of the Rings, I think you'll like this book. The action in it, the pacing of it, this sort of thing. So, okay. I'm going to cut this short. And I'm going to run my ads. Because we always got to run ads. Otherwise, how will you know to buy my books? These are my books. I wrote them. Are my books better than this one? I can't say better. I will say different. I got some sci-fi in there. I had a little conspiracy theory action happening. But William Morris is a tremendous, tremendous writer. Top 5 for me. Top 3 maybe. I haven't done a top list, but he up there. Okay, people. I know I say I'll see you next week. I am planning to. Let's hope nothing else explodes.